I had been waiting to ask you all just to hold this space and conversation because I know that there was that weight still on us because that suspect hadn't been apprehended, and that all of you were just waiting for that moment, even maybe not knowingly. But on this Monday morning, I think it's time to talk about Melissa. She was your friend?
Yeah. And I'm really glad that we're doing this together.
We served with her together.
Yeah, she was my friend. She was friends with so many people, and I think when we think about Melissa as a person, as a human being, as a mom, as a friend, as someone who loved chips and margs and ketchups, that's an important part of the story. And there are so many people who didn't know her personally who will just benefit for years and years and years because of the work we were all able to do together to move paid family and medical leave and feeding kids, historic investments in childcare, all of these pieces that have been called like the Minnesota Miracle 2.0, like that happened because Melissa just got to work and made it all happen. So there's sort of two really important Melissas, I think, to talk about, right? Is there's the personal side, and then there's just like the person who so many people will just, her legacy is gonna just live on for a really long time.
Who do you think about? How have you been thinking about Senator Murphy for the last couple of days when you think of Melissa?
Yeah, my entire elected tenure is threaded with Melissa Hortman. She came in a term before I did. We were assistant leaders together. We operated in the House for 12 years together. She supported me in my leadership. I supported her in her leadership. And when I returned to the Senate and found my space in this role, she was the first one to say, "You're not new, sit down and let's get to work."
Tough love.
Melissa is, to know her is to know a person who is very clear about herself. And she was in many ways, not contradictions, but embodied things that you would think as perhaps opposites. She was very serious. She was very blunt. She was very compassionate. She was an exceptional listener. She made room for everyone's perspective and opinion. She was a leader across caucuses. She was a leader for the people. She was a Democrat, and she wanted to do right by Minnesotans. She loved her family deeply and talked about them all of the time. She loved good food. And I think in the last weeks of what was a really difficult 2025 session, we survived on jalapeno Cheetos, which is not nutritious, but necessary.
Thank you for your nursing acumen in this conversation, Senator Murphy.
So I've been thinking a lot about her and her wholeness, and her fierceness, and her commitment to her caucus, to the members that served in that caucus, and to the people of Minnesota. She was never ambivalent about that. She knew what she wanted to accomplish, and she came ready every time to get after what she wanted to get after for the people.
In the years I've known both of you and the late former speaker, they've been a lot of years. And in the beginning, when we were getting to know each other, there were fewer women. So you were a smaller, tighter group. I shouldn't say tighter. You were a smaller group years ago. Women who lead, women in politics. Because of that through line, was there a different kind of closeness with the women who serve, including Ms. Hortman?
For me, yes, because we were coming through this experience together. It was, a frequent topic of conversation, not in the we need to set ourselves apart, but experiencing what it is to lead as a woman in what has been so traditionally a man's world. I served with Mary Murphy. When she was elected, she said there wasn't a women's bathroom available to her in the chamber. She had to go out in the hallway. We've seen tremendous change in the legislature as we've seen more and more young people, people of color, and women get elected. It's changed the nature, but it is impossible, I think, for us to serve in leadership capacities and not recognize the traditions, the foundations, and the way and currents of power in the legislature and what that means for us as women.
Absolutely. I think, when I first came into the legislature, it was in the middle of a biennium. Melissa Hortman, along with Erin Murphy, really took me under their wing because I was starting smack dab in the middle and needed to have that friendship and that mentorship. And as we've watched politics change, and we've watched the people who are at the decision-making table change, and I think become more representative of democracy. We founded the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, and Melissa was so supportive of the formation of that caucus. And there's sort of this very viral moment that happened where several of the women of color in the Minnesota House were giving impassioned speeches, and there was an infamous card game that was happening in the members' room, and she called it out. And she called it out, and I think really stood up for us in a way, frankly, that as a woman, and as a Native woman, I hadn't experienced that in that way before.
That was my first long form interview with Melissa Whitman, was when the day after that. And I remember being in her office, and this is like before viral stuff was just happening every 5 minutes. Kind of baffled that she would do that. And she was just so matter of fact on it. And both a frustrating way for a reporter too, because I was ready for some like AOC fire, and she was just real blunt. She's like, well, it's just wrong.
That's her. That's right. And for the I will not apologize, and here's why. And to just watch the faces of our colleagues who were just indignant. And she truly just was like, this is my job, this is my role, this is what I do. And I think that moment, whether she knew it or not, I think sort of changed the way that people really saw her. As someone you couldn't, because we're on the news, I won't use the word, but as someone you can't mess with in that way. And it truly was, for me, one of the most important moments, I think, even just of my career, of being like, oh, this is how you do this. This is how you unabashedly just stand up for people. And it gave us the freedom and to then just be like, yes, right, to sit up a little straighter. We absolutely belong here. We have her back because she has ours. And that is just what I have watched her do over and over again. As a member of the body, but then also as lieutenant governor, when there have been impossibly hard choices and negotiations and things that have needed to happen, she's always just done what's best for the body as a whole, even when it's hard.
Talking about her work can be probably cathartic. I don't want to talk about the moments of her death. But I want to ask you about how you've been feeling since you found out. So can you tell me how you found out, and then tell me where you're at? What were you thinking about this weekend? Go ahead.
So I was dead asleep. My family, we were all asleep, and there was a loud banging on the door, along with a flashlight in our window, because the State Patrol, who I have worked very closely with for the last 7 years, came immediately when they had heard the news to check on our family. Shortly thereafter, I had a conversation with the governor about what had happened, that there had been 2 shootings, and that there was law enforcement very quickly going to the homes of legislators and other electeds. And then I found out, I don't know, time has no meaning, and that those sort of moments of the early morning, that they thought that she had, that Melissa had been killed. And it just doesn't seem real. I think like this is like yesterday when they apprehended the suspect, like there was a whole other wave of emotions, but I think really just and I'm assuming that my friend here knew before a lot of other folks too, and we were just sort of holding that, and it's just unbelievable. It still doesn't seem real.
There's a sort of the ability to keep at bay some of what you feel when you're thrust into a moment like this, and there's a lot to do. So I also, no one at my door, but a very, very in the wee small hours of the morning call from the chief of staff, who let me know that my colleague, John Hoffman, and his wife, Yvette, had been shot. And they were in the hospital and in surgery, which was shocking unto itself. We didn't have much of any idea yet what was at play. And he, in that call, mentioned that perhaps Speaker Hortman was also involved. And then shortly thereafter, I got a call from the governor, who let me know that she had died. They had worked together for so many years and were close. And, he was wrecked, and I am wrecked when I think about it. So you go into the place of working to make sure the balance of people that I serve with both know and are safe, and that has been the majority of where I've spent my time. But I can't stop thinking about Melissa as the person, Mark, who I got to know over so many years. She, as I mentioned, frequently talked about herself in terms of her family, her parents, how she grew up, her children, and beautiful Gilbert, her dog, who she, loved, and that in her garden. And she posted a photograph when we were done with the special session of Gilbert in the garden. And so to know that Gilbert was also a victim of this was as heart-wrenching as knowing what happened to her and to Mark. It just made it all both real and not at all about politics, but instead about the humans that we are. And while we were at times in the same chamber, and sometimes we were in the opposite chamber, and the two chambers don't necessarily like each other by nature. And I would hear her say things about the Senate, and I was like, what? It's me. I know she cared about me, and I cared about her, and I feel like in so many ways I came up with Melissa Hortman and grew into the politics that I believe in alongside her because of the person she is, the person she was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, probably Nurse Murphy. You're probably not supposed to touch it.
It's okay. We'll wash our hands.
Obviously, the shock of the information comes, and I was sharing with Erin. I was working all weekend, and so the absorption of it is a little bit different until that, you said, in the moment of apprehension. In a much smaller way, all this stuff about the list. I don't want everybody, because the suspect wasn't in custody, and just imagining what happened to Erin and Mark and John and Yvette, and you have a family and you have kids, and you also want to fight for not fight against something, but to get some sense of us back. That's what I wrestled with this weekend, of I don't even know what to think right now. Were you scared?
I think we'd be fools not to be scared. You don't want to dwell there. I didn't want my kids to know that. But you're suddenly self-aware of where you are, and the unknowing of what's happening around you. Yeah.
I think I was immediately went into mom mode, right? And so when the state patrol came and had this conversation, my daughter woke up and we're like, it's okay, right? It's just Trooper Adams outside. We know Trooper Adam. She went back to bed and slept in, and I was like, how do I talk to her about this? Because she was gonna hear about it in some way, right? We couldn't protect her from that news. And so just describing it to my child, and that, we are safe, and we are so grateful to the State Patrol and to the St. Louis Park Police Department and everyone who's making sure that all of our other friends are safe. Just kept coming back to that. And just trying, I think, to, as Erin said, yes, it is a reaction, right? There's fear, and then you become stoic and have to do what you have to do.
Did you ever think about not staying or not running for public office this weekend?
I feel like for this entire year, my colleagues and I have been operating at a higher level of alarm, in part because of what we're seeing and experiencing coming from Washington, and the obvious chipping it away at the foundation of our democracy, people's freedom, people's livelihoods, their lives. So we're already in a state of alarm as we're trying to lead and govern. This weekend, I feel like we've crossed a line that I want to believe we can return from, where our sense of security is shattered. It took a little while for me to let the word assassination sink in. My dear friend, Melissa Hortman, was assassinated. That by itself is a phrase that I would never expect to use. And I think we have to acknowledge it for what that means for us, not just here in Minnesota, but in America. I desperately want us to regain our sense of not bipartisanship and not civility, but who we are as Americans, who are rooted deeply in freedom, and the sense of who we are to each other. I think this weekend in particular has pulled me into that question, who are we to each other if we're not each other's keepers? That is fundamental to who we are as people. And so for me anyhow, I want to stay in this work, to usher that through, to remain who I believe we are, who we are meant to be. And I can't let this madness, this heinous action push me away from my belief in something fundamental to who we are for my kids and everybody's kids and for the future.
Did you think about it, Lieutenant Governor?
I thought about a lot of things this weekend. I don't know, in a span of 36 hours, if I had told more people that I love them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is it's a good reminder, right? That's just needed and necessary. Like, we have to tell each other that.
Mm-hmm.
What I also think that we saw this weekend with all of the people who showed up at protests all across the country was a deep care for one another. Mm-hmm. And I saw posters all across America with Melissa Hortman's face on them, these images. And that there are all these people who are getting to know who we knew. And my hope is that is the antidote to that discouragement for people in running for office. I mean, Melissa Hortman traveled all across the state encouraging people, good folks, regular folks who cared about their community, to run for office. And I hope that that is also part of this legacy in this moment, is that people take a deep breath, think about what they want for, right, their family and community, their block, their state and their country. And even if they are afraid, that they still stand up for what they believe in and put themselves into leadership roles, because something that would just like multiply this tragedy would be if more people said, that's not for me. I don't want to be a part of that. And so, yes, lots of big feelings this weekend, lots of big feelings now in this moment. And we cannot be discouraged because that is when this poison and toxicity and divisiveness, right, is allowed to fester and then spread everywhere. And I think having that joint statement that came out from the entire congressional delegation, Democrats and Republicans, is exactly right. That is what should be happening in this moment. We should be horrified. It is unacceptable, and should just continue to find those places. And for Minnesota to be an example of how you can do that.
I'm hanging on by a thread here, so I'm just going to ask one more question. Sorry, I apologize. If it were someone else, and it wasn't Melissa Hortman, and I was talking to her right now about what happened to this colleague, what would she say to do?
You know, the one that, as I mentioned earlier, Melissa was always, she was very direct and sometimes really blunt, which I loved about her. I think she would remind us about the importance of who we are. I think she would be looking out for our families, her family, other families, because we're grounded there. If we're not grounded there, as people serving in public office, we're not grounded. And I am pretty sure she would be, you know, off air using some very, very intense cuss words about what we're experiencing. But she would remind us again of who we are as people, and she would lead.
One of the most powerful things that she did was just grow new leaders. There are so many people that I talked to yesterday who used to work for her at some point and just said, my entire career is because of Melissa Hortman. I have done X, Y, and Z in my life because of her mentorship and leadership. And so, you know, I think about that, like she would absolutely be tending to the staff of the caucus, to her members. And I think also encouraging us and readying us for the fight ahead. I was talking to a DFL leader in CD3 yesterday who said, what are we going to do at our first door knock when she's not there? And she was like at every at every door knock kickoff, and just did the work. Like she oftentimes would talk about how much she hated the political stuff, but she didn't use the word stuff. But
Getting that she was a prolific swearer.
yeah, yes. And you know, I think that she would also, in this moment, just encourage us to just keep doing the work, to certainly take care of ourselves and of our families, and to tend to the things that, like you said, made us human beings, and make us human beings, but also would have said, okay, what are we going to do? What's
Something
next?
like, you're not new here, sit down.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Is there anything you want to say about her that I didn't ask?
She was so funny. She was, and like we were talking about swearing, but she had a vocabulary like nobody's business, and she could make you feel things without any swear words at all. She's exceptional. She's exceptional.
I'm going to miss her a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm. We will.
This is, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it's sometimes I have a problem being on time. It's just Melissa and I shared that problem. And so
I've lost so much respect. And I would say, in your blessed memory, I've lost so much respect for you, former speaker.
But she
Lieutenant Governor, it's not acceptable.
She came with her bags. She opened everything, and she was ready. Like she was ready.
she was ready to go.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And we it was an ongoing who would come in by the skin of their teeth. And so I was grateful to have a partner in that role.